Tape my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? Hush.
Welcome back, World Ablaze listeners, to episode 60, the big 60, recorded on this day, February 5th, 2025. And this is an evening recording for me. And listen, before we move on, I have some housekeeping. I finally did it. I completed a website. We have a website for the show. You could find us online at www.worldablazepodcast.com. Again, that's worldablazepodcast.com. You have all of our episodes there. There's an option to sign up to join the mailing list. There are links to various podcast apps and players there so you can listen to the show. You could also buy me a coffee there, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. There's also past guest page here. So if you want to see some of the guests that I've had already with some of their background and which episodes they are on, that page is up and running as well. I'm still adding to it, by the way, but I got a few up there so far. I have a contact page. So if you do want to contact me, you can never remember my email, but you remember my website. There's a contact page there. And there's also a contact form for you to become a guest now. This applies to anybody who's in media, who's a journalist, another podcaster. If you're a politician, if you're a member of the intelligence community, military, etc. For example, I have an ex-DEA agent scheduled to be on the show in an upcoming episode. I have an immigration lawyer scheduled and confirmed to be on the show. And I have various other experts that are waiting in the wings to sit down and talk with yours truly, George Fonts. Anyway, I'm planning 2025 to be a very informative and entertaining show. And what I mean by entertaining, I mean you don't have to just listen to my voice. Although I do want to say I appreciate everybody who listens. And if you appreciate me, this is where Buy Me a Coffee comes in. You can now support me by literally going to Buy Me a Coffee. And that is Buy Me a Coffee. The website is www.buymeacoffee.com/worldablaze. Now, you can also get that link on my website, worldablazepodcast.com. And the other thing that you can do is you can find that link on my social media page. I was going to say pages, but it's specifically on my X page. And if you're not following me on X, what the hell is wrong with you? My X handle is at Fonts Ablaze. That's at FONTES Ablaze. And you can find me there on X. And by all means, follow me, interact. Let's have a conversation. Send me content. I'll share content with you. And again, if you do want to support me, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link. Any amount you send is appreciated. And why this is important is because I am a completely independent podcaster. I'm not backed by big media. I don't have big media pockets behind me, which also means they're not controlling me. That being said, yes, you will hear advertisements on the podcast, but those are more like radio ads, pretty close to what that is. And we don't really make a lot on that, to be quite honest. I mean, we get a little. I'll be upfront with you about that, but it's not really supporting us. So if you want to support my efforts and you want to continue to hear this amazing voice, please buy me a coffee. Anyway, all right, that's enough self-pontification there. Also, I need to wish my brother Manuel Fonts, the host of Stretch Goose Podcast, co-host of Random Thoughts with Manuel and George, a very happy birthday. His birthday was February 4th. He's an old goat. I say that jokingly because I'm actually older than him. But listen, wish him a happy birthday. Go listen to Stretch Goose Podcast, literally spelled Stretch Goose, one word. You type that into any podcast aggregator or, browser or whatever. It should pop right up. So if you go on Apple, Spotify, you use Good Pods, whoever you use, just type Stretch Goose one in, like one word. Or you could do Stretch Goose one word and then space podcast. It'll come right up. He's very good at what he does. Support my brother. Download his podcast. Listen to his podcast. If you like what I do, you're going to like him as well. Now, being his birthday, of course, I'm going to have to pop some bubbly. And I'm going to pop some champagne for my brother, even though he doesn't drink, poor bastard. So here I am popping a nice little bottle of Mum. And I'm going to raise a glass to my brother. So happy birthday, Manuel. I hope your entire month is filled with happiness and joy and at least a few 9 holes of golf for you. Oh, man. Cheers. I also want to let everybody know that my brother's actually one of the reasons I'm a podcaster. He got me into it. I was on his show in the beginning. And so big shout out to Stretch Goose Podcast. And again, happy birthday to my brother, Manuel Fonts. Now, on with the show, as they say, the episode. I'm going to admit, I can't keep up. Trump is too much. The guy's an Energizer Bunny. I don't know what he's doing. For those who don't know what the Energizer Bunny is, just type that up in your browser, Google it. It's you'll get it. But anyway, he is everywhere. He's like a wrecking ball and a hammer of justice at the same time. And I know many people out there can't agree with everything he's doing. There are people who are ecstatic about everything he's doing. I support Donald Trump. I think he's doing a great job thus far. I do question a few things, though. Like I wasn't behind his tariff initiatives at first, but it seems to be working because nations are caving in. I'm not going to be able to explain that. I'm not an economist, and most other economists stated that this was a very bad move, but it's working in our favor, in America's favor anyway, somehow. But I'll get to that in a bit. The bigger news that just came out, though, is Trump putting his foot down and stating when he was having a conference with old Bibi Netanyahu out in Israel that he's taking over Gaza. Yeah, we're gonna take it over. We're gonna own it for a while. Apparently, we're gonna rebuild it, make it safe, and apparently he wants to find new homes for the Palestinians. The world is up in arms, kind of like, hey, you can't do that. That's not right. That's not right. But funny enough is most of the world who is opposed to any kind of plan for Gaza, for the Palestinians, have not done anything thus far to help the situation or offer a solution. Well, at least not since, let's see. It's been a while. Let's just put it that way. It's been a while. And so for the area that nobody wants to take responsibility for, they all seem very opinionated and have a lot to say about it. And Netanyahu's face, his face as Trump just dropped this bomb on him is the best. And I wish this part of the show is video so you can see it, but just do a search for what I'm talking about, and you'll find plenty of videos come up. And in fact, I'm going to play a clip because I want you to hear Donald Trump himself say this.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
Interesting. And while many people are up in arms about Trump saying, it's just a land grab, he's just doing this for Israel's benefit, and he's going to end up giving the land back to Israel, there's a lot to unpack in what he said. And he's right. We can't go back. We can't do what has been done. It's just going to be the same thing as it has been for the last 100 years or so. So he's right in that. And he's right that the Palestinian people, the true Palestinian people, have a right to live a good life in a good area. And the only reason that they're going back is because they have nowhere else to go. So that is also true. But is it right for the U.S. to step in and take control of a territory? Now, a lot of people were trying to claim on social media, oh, it's a sovereign territory. You can't do that. You can't just step in and take a sovereign territory uncontested. You're just going to put us back into war. But it's not a sovereign territory. It's an occupied territory. And it's been occupied by Israel. It was never a sovereign territory. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the right move, but I think personally it is an interesting move. It's a move that I believe had to be made by somebody who is willing to step up and say, look, we need to squash this. I think what Trump is doing is trying to create a buffer between the chaos, between the terrorists, between Hamas, the people who are hiding within the Palestinian people and just waging ungodly amounts of war and attacks and missiles and everything else you could think against Israel. I think he's just trying to create a buffer zone. Now, Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians. They've already been very vocal, say, hey, we're not taking them. And I get it. Jordan says, no, we're not taking them. But what's interesting is this goes back many, many years. A lot of people are familiar with what's called the two-state solution. Well, this two-state solution has been, how would I say this? It's been both proposed and talked about as far back, recorded anyway, as far back as 1917. Okay, everybody thinks that the two-state solution is basically, something that came up in the late 80s or the 2000s. But no, this has been going on since 1917, and a lot of people think that, look, everybody was okay with displacing the Palestinians. Okay, when Israel became a nation state in 1948. But a lot of people need to realize that in 1946, the two-state solution talks came up again. In fact, before that, it was also brought up again in 1937. But in 1946, it got discussed. It was brought to the table. 1947, it was again brought to the table. Okay, and every time this has been brought up, and we also got to point out Israel as well. Both the Palestinians, or who were considered to be the Palestinian people at the time, and Israel, they both were at odds with each other. Neither would want to recognize the other as being a legitimate sovereign nation or nation state. Yes, Israel did not want to recognize Palestine or any piece of land or sovereign tract of land that would become the domain of the Palestinian people. And in turn, the Palestinians have historically been vehemently against Israel as a nation and even as a people. And at this point, it's very clear, after all these years, look, these two people hate each other. There's no love there. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. There's just no way to do it. Israel does not like the Palestinians. Palestinians do not like Israelis. And there are those that say, no, that's not true. I like Israelis. I like Palestinians. It's just the terrorists. This is such a convoluted issue that the reality is, from the outside looking in, you guys hate each other. Israel and Palestine hate each other. That's just what it is. Now, as far as everything that's going on, this two-state solution, again, as I said, it started kind of back in 1917. It was discussed as far back as even, fast forwarded a bit, let's say 1920 through 1923. It was reintroduced with further talks and proposals in 1937. Then in 1947. In 1948, it was then brought up again. Now, this is years after, almost 20 years after the sovereignty of Israel, the nation state of Israel. It was brought up again in 1967. Then it wasn't done. 1982, it was revisited. In 2000, 2001, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2013, 2014, and as recently as 2017. It seemed like the 2000s were, it was a time where we were really trying to find a solution for both Israel and the Palestinians. And each and every time, rejected. And I'm not just going to blame the Palestinians, because it was also the great nation of Israel who was opposed. There were times where, like, no, we're not going to do this. We don't agree with the borders. Or at that time, the borders were set as far as who was going to get what. in terms of land, right? But they would say, well, we're not going to recognize Palestine as a sovereign nation. Well, that's not the whole point of the two-state solution, is so that each people has their own sovereign nation in which they can rule. But Israel was very against it. And in turn, Palestine was against any agreement as well that didn't favor them with a massive amount of land. In 2017, most of the Palestinians were actually for it, but Hamas stepped up as the ruling body or government of the Palestinians, and they rejected it. They wanted to restructure the agreement to make the borders what it was in the 1967 agreement, which basically gave Israel very little. And at the same time, they did not want to recognize Israel as a sovereign nation. And then we know what happened later, fast forward 2023, and then 22 or 23, the attacks against Israel on that fateful October, where they came in and killed a bunch of people at a concert. And so here we are in constant conflict. Fast forward to today, in February 5th, 2025, and America's stepping in, and Trump's like, look, we got to stop this nonsense. And let's be honest, it's evident that there may never be a solution. The Arab world doesn't want the Palestinians. None of them want to take them in. Jordan's rejecting it. Qatar's rejecting it. Everybody's rejecting it. The Egyptians don't want them, but they want the Israelis to deal with them. But nobody else wants to deal with them. But yet all those other nations, the Arab nations, are standing up and saying, America, you're wrong. You can't do this. This is not the right way. But yet nobody in that region wants to step up and help. They want to keep the Palestinian people a people without a country. Now, if we go back a ways, and here's always been the argument, everybody wants to cite Zionism as being the root of the evil, the root of the problem here. But way before it was a nation state in 1948, before Israel became what it is, that land was always for the tribe of Judah, the Judean people. And the Judean people are the people of that land in which we call Israel today. The Palestinians want to lay claim to it. But the reality is, it was always the land of the Jewish people. And in fact, the Ottoman Empire, they're the ones who came in and they took over the land that we now know as Israel today. And they claimed it to be their own. Under Ottoman rule, they drove out the Jewish people. Now, here's where the Palestinians come in. The people who were considered Palestinian before they were even called Palestinian, by the way, they decided that, you know what, we're going to side with the Ottomans here. And what they did is they kind of made a deal so they can stay in the land. And when they did that, they took over the homes of all the Jewish people who were ousted and forced out. There was always a small Jewish settlement that was left, but most of them were displaced throughout Europe and the Middle East, but mostly throughout Europe. And the Jews never forgot. Jewish people never forgot. And eventually they came back to take their land. They always had a plan to do so for many years. So to make the argument that the Palestinians were displaced and it wasn't Jewish land is really bullshit, because it's one thing to be conquered and accept that, but it's another when a people are displaced and have a plan and continue to work on taking their land back and never gave up. And that is what the Jewish people did. Now, can we feel sorry for the Palestinians who were displaced? Absolutely, because generations later, those were born, they were so far removed from that heinous act that they're innocent in it. And we can agree in that. Absolutely. But this two-state solution, these talks have been going back to 1917. I mean, let that sink in. 1917, they've been talking about this. All the way back to where it led to the Balfour Declaration, which was, let's say, 1920 or so, somewhere around there. And even in that declaration, the British, who at the time had control of that area, they even had a mandate, which they called the Mandate for Palestine, in that agreement, they said that there must be a place or home for Israel or for the Jewish people within that land. So even back then, it was always stated that within that land that could be contested as being called Palestine or Israel or whatever, the Jewish people should always have a home. And that also led to other treaties and agreements to where the proposals of the great landmass of Transjordan. Okay. And that was part of that mandate for Palestine. And in that Transjordan, that part of that land, originally they were going to have the ability for Palestinians to be able to be a part of that, as well as Egypt. That's another story that we or road that we can go down, but not right now. So basically, throughout history, even though the Jewish people fought to get their land back, got their land back in 1948, nobody ever forgot about the Palestinian people, but the Palestinian people and the Arab communities would not accept it. And so fast forward, there was nothing but constant wars to attack and displace the Jewish people. And in turn, other nations started turning away the Palestinians and ousting them from their countries. So the Palestinians really got the bad end of all these deals, it seems like. But it's not that the world didn't try to give them something, to give them their own land. The problem is they themselves wouldn't accept the agreements. And also, admittedly, even Israel at times are saying, no, screw that. We're not going to agree to this. We're not going to recognize the Palestinian people. We're not going to recognize their nation state. We don't want them to have a land. Because they hold that bitterness, that hatred in them from all those years going back back generations, so far removed from who they are now, by the way. But they won't let go. They won't let go of a time when they were displaced from their land by the Ottoman Empire and how the then Palestinian people sided with the Ottoman Empire to help the Ottoman Empire take over that land. Now, I'm kind of giving an overview here. I'm not going very deep. So if you're shaking your head and saying, that's not exactly right, you may be right in saying that, because all these events throughout the year are a conversation in and of themselves. And to be honest, for me to really go through all this, it's going to be a complete podcast series. I mean, there's no way around it. There's just so much going on here. But, someone's already done that. I still am not going to rule it out, though. This is an important issue and it needs to be discussed. But let's get back to Trump's statement. Let's get back to America's involvement. I think Trump is saying, yes, we're an ally of Israel. And yes, it's wrong what's happening to the Palestinian people. And yes, we need to separate these people so they could stop fighting each other. And I think what he's doing, maybe in his mind, is I'm going to create this little buffer. I'm going to create this buffer. And guess what, Jordan and Egypt? The original agreements from way back where you were going to take in the Palestinian people, I'm going to hold you to it. It's basically like Trump is saying, these Middle Eastern problems are your problems, and none of you are doing anything or offering a solution to help out here. And yes, I know it's deeper than that. I do. I'm not naive to it. But I'm just saying that at least the U.S., at least Trump, is trying to come up with a solution. Is it the end-all, be-all solution? I really don't believe it is. But the U.S. stepping in is a huge statement. A huge statement. Now, nations around the world, Western powers, are vehemently against this. Even France is stepping up, of all people. Quiet France, who never wants to get involved in anything, never pays their fair share of anything. Very similar to Germany, although Germany can't because they don't really officially have a military to get involved in anything anyway. But regardless, they're even stepping in. France rejects U.S. President Trump's proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and resettle Palestinians. Now, France's opposition is kind of rich because if you want to go back to the history, they were kind of a part of this way back, going back to 1917. I'm going to get a little help here from Britannica Online just because they had the history of everything I was looking for on this particular subject just right there in front of me. I had to bounce around too much. But going back to World War I, so the Arabs joined the British against the Ottomans in a revolt of 1916. In July of 1917, the army of Prince Faisal ibn Hussein captured El Aqaba, and by October 1918, Amman and Damascus were in Allied hands. In 1920, the Conference of San Remo in Italy created, here we go, two mandates. One over Palestine was given to Great Britain, and the other over Syria went to France. This act effectively separated the area now occupied by Israel and Jordan from that of Syria. In November of 1920, Abdullah, Faisal's brother, arrived with 2,000 armed supporters intent on gathering together tribes to attack the French, who forced, here we go, the French forced Faisal to relinquish his newly founded kingdom in Syria. So the French wanted to take control of Syria, keep control of Syria. They didn't want the people of Syria to even rule themselves. And this is 1920 now, okay? And so the French were causing a lot of trouble at a time where Britain was trying to come up with the two-state solution, which wasn't exactly called a two-state solution, but even then they were trying to come up with a two-state solution. Now, again, part of this mandate that I'm discussing right now, where the French were involved, this is where Britain said that the Israeli people will always have a home within what they were calling Palestine at that time within this agreement. But the Palestinians didn't want that. But anyway, getting back to the French. So the French, instead of trying to keep the peace, they tried to keep control, go to war with Syria, and British had to step in, smack them in the face, and go, look, we're taking it from you. So British ended up taking control and kicking the French out of the picture. So France, I'm glad you're opposed. You're putting your foot down and saying what America's doing wrong, but you didn't really do anything to help way back in 1917 or 1920. Fast forward all these years, you still haven't done anything. So how about you just shut your mouth? So it's important that even with everything I'm telling you, it's not all inclusive. This isn't every single little tiny detail. There was a lot going on in each proposal agreement throughout the years, going back to 1916, 1917, all the way to 2017, all the way to today. And I'm not sure we're ever going to come up with a solution for Israel and Palestine. I really don't. But Trump's actions are an attempt to try to do something, to rebuild the area, to get rid of the bombs, to start over, create economic wealth and sustainability in the area for the people of the area. Now, what does that actually mean for Palestinian people? I don't know if Trump is intending to give that area back to the Palestinians or if he wants to keep it as a buffer zone between the terrorists who hide among the Palestinian people and Israel. That very well may be the case. But I thought it'd be important for me to discuss this on this episode because there's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of people that don't understand the history, and even I don't have the full understanding of the entire history, but I've done a lot of research on this, by the way. In fact, I was going to dedicate quite a few episodes to it until I heard a few other podcasters already do it. And I was just like, well, the information's already out there. But then again, maybe you listening haven't heard those particular podcasts, which means maybe I should revisit this particular topic and go over it in more detail and in more depth. Now, in other news, did the tariffs work? See, Trump's coming up with even more solutions, and everybody was opposed to Trump just slapping tariffs on everybody. I mean, tariffs for Mexico, tariffs for Canada, tariffs for Colombia, tariffs for the EU, tariffs for China. In fact, he proposed a 25% tariff on Canada, 25% tariffs on Mexico, and 10% tariffs in China. I'm not quite sure what he was doing with the EU, but everybody was like, you can't do this. This is suicide. You're cutting off all your allies. Why would you do this? Why? Why, Trump? Why? You're insane. You're crazy. Well, fast forward, and Mexico is complying. And in fact, Justin Trudeau, with all his bravado and his boisterous speeches and what he's going to do to stand up to Trump and impose, if you do 25%, I'm going to do 50%. And if you do 50%, I'm going to do 100%. And in the end, Trudeau caved and did nothing. In fact, but before he caved, he made this statement.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
Way to stand your ground, Trudeau. Way to stand your ground. That's right. You put your foot down. You tell big bad America and big bad Trump what you're going to do to us. You're going to impose tariffs too. And so in response, Trump goes, yeah, great there, Justin. So get this, February 1st, that's a Saturday, right? Yeah, tariffs go into effect. Tomorrow they're going into effect. Yeah, whatever. And in response, February 2nd, the Canadian dollar tanked. In fact, it went down to be a value of only 68 cents to $1 US. Good call, Trudeau. Good call. And so this is a lesson that we didn't expect to learn here. Tariffs, for the most part, shouldn't work in today's times, in today's global economic market. It should not work because it's really seen as protectionism, which is exactly what Trump is using it for, to protect our own markets, our own goods, made in the USA, all that. And many people said that we would be shut off, ousted, isolated, but Mexico caved, and Trudeau, with all of his bravado, has caved. In fact, here's a clip of Trudeau responding to the tariffs that Trump was imposing the next day, that February 1st, that Saturday.
I had a good call with Donald Trump last night again. We obviously talked about laying out the facts, talking about how the intense and effective connections between our two countries flow back and forth. We talked about some of the challenges that we can work on together. It was a good call.
Okay, and so fast forward, he had this to say. I believe this was released on February 3rd. So basically after the weekend and everything didn't go so well for him, this is what Trudeau said. And he put this on X. It's funny how all the politicians and world leaders are communicating to the world through X. It's an amazing times. You would never see this before. Okay, Justin, here's what he says. He said, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Well, that is very funny because Trudeau was stamping his feet before, telling Trump the border's not our problem. We protect our side. Your side's your problem. Fentanyl's not our issue. And after your Canadian dollar tanked and realized that you couldn't keep up with the economic power and weight of the U.S. market, that you are now going to be compliant and work together with the U.S. to secure the Canadian border. Interesting. Trudeau also went on to say, in addition, Canada is making a new commitment to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, which is right in line with what Trump just did. Trudeau said they will also ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. He also states, I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with $200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. Of course they're going to be paused, Justin. Trump also agreed to pause it for 30 days. You see, this was a negotiation tactic that somehow Trump made work. Even the EU, when Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on the EU, even they were at first stamping their feet and saying this is ridiculous. How can you do this to your allies? And then even they decided, maybe we should rethink this. How about we just work out a deal with Trump over there? How about we just do that? Colombia folded. They were going to impose tariffs on the U.S. for the U.S. saying, I will impose tariffs, and in addition, other things, because they wouldn't take their own citizens back when they were being deported from the U.S. And Colombia folded. Mexico folded. Even the EU said, no, we'll work something out. The only people that didn't fold, of course, is China. We already knew China wouldn't. In fact, they said that they're going to impose even higher tariffs on natural gas and clothing and blah, 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 and whatever. But we can deal with China later. And, in addition, since I just brought up China, the pressures that Trump put on Panama with tariffs and, again, other actions and the things he wanted to impose, Panama backed out of the deal with China for the Panama Canal. Just backed out. Panama decided, it's better for us to side with the USA. So let's call Trump crazy, because we all know he kind of is. He's a wild card. But somehow his crazy is working in a positive way for the United States. And somehow these other nations are seeing the light and realizing we can't oppose the U.S. It's better to work with the U.S. And I'm not sure what lesson I have for you in all this, other than maybe I don't have a lesson. Maybe I just don't. Maybe I'm just surprised, as all of you are. I didn't think any of this would work. I thought Trump's tariff initiative, honestly, were crazy. I literally did. I didn't think they would work. But here we are, proven wrong again by Trump's, dare I say, genius? I'm not quite sure he really is a genius, but damn it, somehow he just keeps winning. Well, thank you all for tuning in. And remember, go to my website, worldofblazepodcast.com. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/worldofblaze. And thanks for listening. Have a great day. And please share the show.
I wanna taste your content, hold your breath and feel the tension. Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.